Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists. I'm Will, and I'm apparently losing it, but hello. It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope you're having a good one. I hope you're seeing this video on Valentine's Day as well, because that means you're subscribed, and that just makes me happy. And if you're not subscribed, guess what? You can be. It's easy. It's free. It requires minimal exertion. You just press once. Don't press once though if you're already subscribed, okay? It's a whole nother ball game. But great day to show some love. Valentine's Day. Press that button, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, sorry for the tardiness on getting these out. I was out of town this past weekend, so I couldn't dive into these like I normally would. But it's Monday. I'm up early. I got my coffee. We diving in. And I hope you're here with me on this journey. And special shout out, thank you to those of you that were on this journey with me last Thursday for the watch party for episode 7, 8, and 9. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm looking forward to this week's. I hope we have even more people stop by. And quick refresher on that is this Thursday, 6 p.m. and my Twitch channel. It'll be linked below. We will be watching episodes 10, 11, and 12 right when they drop on Amazon Prime. Be there, be square. That way nobody can spoil it for you because you watching as soon as possible. And help me find Easter eggs. It'll be fun. But like I said, I was out of town last weekend. I'm in town this weekend. So we're going to do more than just that watch party. But definitely the Thursday at 6 p.m. Central American time is the place to be at because that's going to be the first one. But in the Discord or on Twitter, I'll definitely talk about some other times. So if you're interested in catching one of those other times, join the Discord, follow us on Twitter, and you'll be the first to know. Other than that, though, let's stop stalling. I got 3 episodes to chug through. Let's go. All right, first and foremost, spoiler warning. I forgot to do this in the intro. I've seen all the campaigns, so little details and things that I explain may spoil future things from the show. That being said, I will always do my best to explain without spoiling where possible. But all right, so we start out with this shot of a piece of white stone, and you can see the little flecks of residuum within it. And I just thought this was really cool because, you know, Whitestone and residuum are things we have known about for a long time if you've been following Critical Role. But this is the first time, at least that I recall, that we've actually like had an illustrated, you know, example of the residuum within it. We knew that residuum was like refined from Whitestone, but I don't know. I don't know enough about refining, I guess, but I never pictured it as like little flecks within the Whitestone. So this was just cool to see. And, you know, it's cool that the show's kind of like given this extra history in this flashback. But yeah, just, you know, in terms of Easter eggs and details, this is obviously just foreshadowing the importance of not only Whitestone as a kingdom because of its, you know, natural abundance of this material around it, but the importance of this powerful component residuum that may have a role to play yet in the show. Next up, you know, we have Professor Anders kind of display the residuum interacting with this crystal, which he refers to as a Lambent Crystal, which I don't know if I'm just missing the D&D connection to this, but, you know, as a partial Star Wars nerd as well, this this stood out to me because Lambent crystals are a thing in the Star Wars universe. They're these basically magical crystals that are used as light sources, among other things. So again, I don't know. My nerdiness doesn't go deep enough to know if this is also a D&D thing, and maybe Star Wars stole that from D&D originally. A very, very quick Google search didn't, you know, yield any of those types of results. So I'm not sure if this is just a shout out to Star Wars, or maybe this is something that Matt even had in his world and I just forgot about. But maybe this is the same thing. You know, there are magical sources of light in Taldore. I think even the torches in Vox Machina's keep were light sources of crystal, not actual flames. So maybe Lambent crystals serve the same purpose in this world as they do in Star Wars. But now I'm just rambling, but I just thought this was a cool potential shout out to the Star Wars universe, or, you know, might be something. So you get to hear me ramble about it. Congratulations. And finally in this scene, one little detail that I loved is this dark stain on Percy's shirt. I think it's symbolic of the fact that he has a darkness at his core that is growing within him, or will soon be, at least at the timing of this particular scene. So maybe a reach, but I'm going with it. All right, next up, this eye. There's a lot of eye imagery in these episodes, actually, but this was a literal blink and you miss it moment. I think it was up for 1 frame of animation. So I honestly just wanted to include this for people that didn't notice this. But this flashed up during Percy's flashback dream sequence when he was explaining how he was inspired to design guns through his dreams. So clearly to me, this is like an Orthax sighting, or at least, like a Percy infused Orthax sighting. So yeah, just thought this was cool and wanted to point this out. Next up, we have a very chilling parallel, and I may be reaching here, but I have to think this was intentional symbolism. But we have Percy kneeling over the dead bodies of his family, who, he's actually kneeling on the symbol of the sun, so it looks like his family is hanging beneath the sun, just like his new found family was hanging from the sun tree. And even the bodies in their proportions kind of parallel here. Going from left to right, we have Percy's father, who could be the Grog parallel, then Pike, then Keyleth, then Scanlan, then Vex, then Vax. So I just think this is too on the nose to not be intentional, and just incredible parallel, even as dark as it is. Percy's dealing with a lot. Okay, so this next detail is my favorite of the episode and is honestly one of my favorite details of the entire show. So we have Percy explaining everything to the group, including about the names on his barrels. And Scanlan asks, whose name is on the 6th barrel? Who's the 6th barrel for? And Percy actually does not respond, but you'll notice his shadow is pointing the gun to his own head. Obviously a dark and chilling foreshadowing that the 6th barrel is for himself. Now, in the campaign, this was similar but slightly different. So in the campaign, at the start, Percy also had 5 out of the 6 barrels with names on them, so the 6th barrel was blank. Now, Matt and Taliesin said they didn't talk about this, so it wasn't planned what the 6th barrel was going to do, but they both had the similar idea that perhaps the 6th barrel would be for Percy, and Taliesin confirmed this, that the 6th barrel was going to be to kill himself once he had, exacted his revenge. And potential campaign spoilers coming up here. But a 6th name does eventually appear on the barrel, and I'm not going to talk about who that is or anything because we don't know how the show's going to go with it. So what Matt revealed was that names would eventually just continuously appear. Like as Percy crossed off a name, a new name would then appear, and that's how it would work. But seems like they may be going a different way in the show since, the barrel is pointing to Percy's head, which aligns more with what Taliesin had originally planned. But, I guess it remains to be seen. But either way, what a chilling, awesome detail here. Next up, we have a great little detail of the reflection of Vedmire's house in this pond. As the soldiers run through it, the ripples completely distort it. And I think that's great foreshadowing of what is going to happen to Vedmire's. It's going to be essentially burned to the ground and in complete chaos by the end of this episode. And then a couple of quick references in this scene where, Scanlan is explaining his plan. He says Venkman instead of Vedmire, which is just a shout out to Ghostbusters. But then he also says, I'm a master distractor, which I feel like that phrasing is potentially set up for him later, talking about the fact that he is a master debater. But we'll see if that one pays off or not. So next up, we have Scanlan running amok through Vedmire's, and he breaks into this one room. And one of my favorite moments is that he stumbles across these groups playing D&D. It's fantastic. And there's a bunch of little Easter eggs in this scene. First and foremost, we have these shields behind the Dungeon Master here. And I think this is a nod to the fact that in Campaign 1, one of the early sets they had a shield behind Matt, the Dungeon Master, that had the Critical Role logo on it. So I feel like this has to be an intentional placement of these shields here. But also, the shield on the left has a big star on it that looks to be blue, which are the exact same symbol as the Dallas Cowboys, which is Travis Willingham's favorite team. Moving on from this, we also have these books under the table, which it looks like a dice is on one of them. So to me, this is definitely this world's Dungeon Master's Guide, Monster Manual, Player's Handbook. And next to those, we have an enormous bag, which could only be a reference to Laura Bailey's enormous dice bag. And finally, I think this has to be the Matt NPC of this episode. I didn't spy the lookalike Matt NPC anywhere in this episode. I don't think he was in it. So just like episode 4, I think we have to find him more hidden than that. And Matt voiced the game master, even it explicitly says that in the credits. So to me, this clearly has to be the Matt NPC. And what better NPC than this to be the Matt NPC? So this has to be him. Okay, next up, as Scanlan is roaming through Vedmire's, there are so many just things scattered throughout the hallways and rooms. A lot of creature trophies, horns, skulls, and I I don't think it would be worth anyone's time for me to just kind of blindly speculate about which creature each of these may be referring to. Because a lot of them would just be guesses, and I don't really think any of them are explicit nods necessarily. I think it's just showing that Vedmire is a hunter. But I did like that there was this smiley face hidden in the, or not hidden, but just displayed in this case. And, it made me happy as I was combing through this episode. Felt like he gave me a nice little pick-me-up, so I'm sharing him now with you. All right, so now we have Scanlan up to his shenanigans, running amok in Vedmire's, just causing havoc. And this is a little bit different from what happened in the campaign, only in that he didn't take all these potions in the campaign. He was just using his innate abilities for the most part. But to start with, we have him take this potion that allows him to teleport. So that didn't happen in the campaign, but Scanlan has an ability called Dimension Door that he did use during this portion of the campaign to kind of teleport around Vedmire's. So, I'm not sure why they made this change other than they've been making these types of changes for how characters get their abilities. So maybe it was a streamlining thing, a simplicity thing. Maybe they just don't want to take the time to explain everyone's innate magical capabilities. I'm not sure, but it was pretty spiritually accurate to the campaign. Other than that, this kind of makes it look like Scanlan kind of lucked his way through this, which there definitely was an element of that because Sam, just kind of went in blazing with no real plan. But a lot of it was Sam's just tactical brilliance and utilizing his spells that allowed him to scan bow out, So I have been seeing some people slightly upset that they made it seem like he would more buffooned his way through it through luck with these potions. But I get what they were doing, and again, I think it was pretty spiritually accurate. But then next up, we have the second potion that reduces him, and once again, this is not something that happened in the campaign, but I think this is just a representation of the potion of reduce, and the teleportation potion, I believe, was a representation of the potion of recall, just for what that's worth to anyone. But then we move on to him using this third potion, which did happen in the campaign, the one that allows him to breathe fire and burn the place down, basically. So I loved this. And then they kind of combine this with another moment because this potion of fire breathing kind of gives him bad gas, and, he lets one rip and everyone's like, oh, God. So that didn't happen in the campaign, but Scanlan did cast Stinking Cloud, which is a bard spell that definitely caused the same type of reaction out of guards and helped him distract them as he was getting away. So they kind of, spiritually included that by combining it with the potion. So that was nice to see. All right, then we have Scanlan kind of lock himself in this room, and this probably isn't even an Easter egg, but having just gone back and went through the episode of the campaign where Scanlan, Vax, and Percy were trying to get into that door that they just referenced in the earlier episode, I couldn't help but notice this door was the exact same locking mechanism. So maybe a shout out, probably not, but went ahead and just had to include it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, definitely go watch. I think it was episode 5's Easter egg breakdown, and I included the clip from the original campaign of the three of them trying to get into the door. It's a classic. And then, of course, when Vedmire ultimately chops his way through, we get this iconic reference to The Shining, the Here's Johnny moment. So this was just fun to see as well. So as they're trying to break through the door, we have Scanlan rifling through the bag of holding, and he's just tossing out items. And there's a few fun little Easter eggs here. So first and foremost, we have this golden bird statue that I went back and forth on what I thought this was. There are a few wondrous items in D&D that are animal statues that this could be a nod to, but I don't think that's the case. I think more likely this is probably just an homage to Matt and Marisha's pet bird Dagon that unfortunately passed away this past year. But I think this is just an homage to their friend. Then we also have Scanlan toss out the hand from episode 1 that they cut off in the bar fight, and then some small object that could be a D20, could be some sort of dice. And I actually don't think I show this frame in the video, so I apologize, but he throws it and there's like a swirl on it that makes it look like a cinnamon roll to me, or perhaps a cupcake. So that's what I'm going to go with. And I think it's, a shout out to the Slayer's cake, or maybe an incredible moment from campaign 2 that they're just, including this little slight Easter egg too. But let me know if you have any other guesses as to what that may be. But then finally, he pulls out his beads of love. And so I actually missed this on my first watch through and didn't catch it till I was doing this breakdown, but this just cracked me up. Then Scanlan ultimately pulls out the scroll of polymorph once again, and this time decides to sing it and transforms himself into a Triceratops, which you can see the skull of just to the left in the frame. So similar to Wild Shape, which I believe I mentioned in an earlier episode, in order to polymorph into a creature, you have to have seen that creature and be familiar with it. And as we know, we haven't seen Scanlan inside of Gilmore's shop yet, so he wouldn't have seen the Triceratops skull there. But they placed one here, so it still all checks out. So I love that that's kind of where he got the inspiration, and just on the fly decided to transform into one. All right, next up we check in with the rest of the crew, who are going to use Scanlan's distraction to sneak in to Anders to try to free Cassandra. And here we have Vax checking for traps, which again is an iconic and frequent thing rogues have to do, which can, at times get a little annoying if you're another person in the party being like, oh my god, do we really have to check for traps every single time we do anything? Like, let's just go. So I love that they have Grog, which, is Travis at times in the campaign. When things get to a lull, he's always like, okay, let's keep it moving. So just love this little shout out here. And then also, and this may be kind of a weird parallel that is not intended, but Grog doesn't let him trap for traps, and then he bursts in and, lo and behold, it's a trap. So in the campaign, Scanlan's Scanbow mission, he doesn't actually climb through a window and see Vedmire, taking a deuce. In the campaign, he just bursts in, and it is also a trap where they are just waiting for him and riddle him with arrows, just like all these guys with arrows are waiting for Grog. So maybe an intended parallel, or, maybe I'm just doing a classic Will Reach. But either way, wanted to point it out. Also in this scene, we get to see another iconic druid ability. Keyleth uses Move Earth, which, is pretty self-explanatory. He uses it here to block the arrows, but also to lift Vex up, and just thought this was cool. Then we come back to the rooftop, where we get Scanlan using his lightning bolt spell to take out Vedmire. And this isn't exactly how it happened in the campaign, but this was just awesome. And him dick thrusting for the lightning bolt is a call out to Critical Role's intro during campaign 1, where Scanlan does the same thing. So this was just great. And I love that they had Vedmire, stepping on his hands so that he couldn't do it the normal way. Thusly, he had to dig lightning. It only makes sense. So just iconic and amazing, and wanted to share this with you if you did not see the original Critical Role intro. And then I had to show this shot just because, 1, it's badass, but 2, we get our first Ruidus sighting, and I told you guys when that happened I was gonna talk about it. So Ruidus is that smaller red moon to the left, and so far in the show we have only seen Katha, which is the larger moon on the right there. So I was just excited to see my little boy Ruidus finally poking his head around, and that's really all I got, but I had to give him a shout out. And then as the episode ends, we get Percy finding Anders and Cassandra, and Anders actually draws that blade across her throat. It's kind of a cliffhanger ending. But in the campaign, just wanted to point out a slight difference here. It's actually Vax that finds Anders and Cassandra, and Anders does indeed slit her throat in the campaign as well. However, Matt later reveals, out of session, actually on Twitter, that Anders did not actually cut her throat. He instead cast Minor Illusion and only made it appear as if he had. It doesn't look like that's what happened in the show. Spoilers for the next episode if you haven't seen it. But they actually heal her and bring her back. So it seemed to definitely not be an illusion, but just thought it was a fun thing to point out. from the campaign, especially since, like I said, this was just something Matt confirmed on Twitter. So even if you've seen the campaign, you might not have known that. So just a little fun Easter egg for you. And then finally, a little detail that I actually didn't notice until my second watch through was that this episode was written by Travis and Sam, and I just thought that was super cool. I actually did notice the writers on the first three, but I'm actually realizing I don't think I took note of the writers on 4 through 6, so I'm gonna have to go back and check. But I think this is the first episode written by members of the cast, and just wow, shout out to their talent. But also, I think this is provides some interesting insights on changes from the source material. You know, one of the main ones being Scanbo's adventure, you know, taking the potions and kind of, you know, lucking his way through certain things as opposed to how it actually played out in the campaign. If Sam was the one that wrote this episode, then, you know, I think he better than anyone kind of knows what was going through his mind and kind of how to keep that as spiritually accurate as possible. So I just thought it was interesting to see that he wrote this. And of course, the fact that Travis wrote it, not that this has anything to do with it, but just makes me even more cemented in the fact that that star on that shield was a Cowboys reference. And finally, I wanted to include some clips from the original Scanbo campaign moment, but it really was kind of hard to piecemeal little segments together as opposed to just like literally posting the whole segment, which would have been way too long for this video. So instead, I'll recommend you definitely go check that out. It's episode 31 of Campaign 1, but I will just include a little snippet.
Oh no.
Whew, I lived.
I like that Scanlan takes out an entire house. Dude, and we're all probably
you
gonna
were
die.
fucking Rambo just then.
Yeah.
You were Scanlan Rambo.
You're a legend. You're officially a legend.
Do you have any red cloth you can tear off and tie around your forehead?
Because you're...
Do this. Is your beret still on?
Yes.
I never got a beret. Did I get a beret?
You did get a beret. I thought you got a
I
beret.
wanted a
That was
beret.
outstanding.
All right.
Yes.
I approve of this greatly.
Me too, Matt. Me too. Alright, y'all. Thanks for coming with me on this episode 7 breakdown. Hopefully I didn't reach too much, but if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. And I know this spiel has to be getting old, but the comments, likes, and especially subscribes help out this channel so much. We're a baby channel, and that type of interaction and engagement really helps us get in the formula or the algorithm or whatever it's called. This hand gesture is just really important. And yeah, that can help new critters find us and like the recommended and other buzzwords regarding YouTube. And so we would just really appreciate it. You know, the more people that find us, the more people that can tell me when I'm wrong, and then I get better. You know what I'm saying? So help me out. But other than that, it's time for me to dive into episode 8. So I will see you over there. Bye.